can you name a few of the Cardinals' key offseason additions?
Yeah, so they started out, focusing on their own free agents, which a lot of teams do. So they brought back guys like, James Conner, Zach Ertz, a couple other key players, and there were a couple guys they let walk who were who were going to be asking for a lot and got paid a lot.
Yeah.
But they brought right now, thus far, they've really focused on some depth and players in terms of the guys they've went out and signed. They haven't been super active. But I've looked at it. I think what they're doing is they're trying to play for 2023 compensatory picks. They're slated to probably get a third, a fifth, and a sixth with the players that they've lost. So I think what they're doing is they're signing guys that aren't going to count against that. After the draft ends, you can sign players without it affecting the next year's comp pick. So I think they'll be signing some players after the draft. But they brought in Will Hernandez, a former second-round pick, offensive guard from the Giants. Our offensive line coach, Sean Kugler, was his college coach at University of Texas, El Paso. So he struggled with the Giants. He was a starter there, but struggled a bit. They're hoping reuniting him with his college coach, can help him to be a productive player on offensive line. They signed linebacker Nick Vigil from the Vikings, kind of a depth signing, signed a tight end, special teams tight end. I think it was Steven Anderson, who was with the Chargers. So some smaller signings up at this point, in addition to the guys they brought back. Well, the biggest loss, I think, in terms of going a position that they really need to fill is actually probably Chandler Jones. Right now, the edge rusher spot across from Marcus Golden is a couple guys that Devin Kennard and Dennis Gardick, a couple kind of guys that might platoon there, but they don't have a guy that you look at and say that's definitely a solid starting edge rusher. Obviously, Christian Kirk was the big story with the what the contract he got, and he was a good receiver for the Cardinals. I think that's a little bit less of a concern because Rondale Moore, a guy they drafted in the second round, slots, he's a slot receiver, so he should step right into that spot, and it's a little easier, I think, to find some depth at slot receiver. So, but those are the two big ones, and I would say Chandler Jones might be the harder one to replace of the two.
Speaking of Chandler Jones, how do you imagine they'll replace him?
That's a really good question. A lot of people, a lot of Cardinals fans, myself included, think that edge rusher is going to be a position of priority in the draft. So they may take an edge rusher within the first couple of rounds and hope to get that person starting. I could also see them, signing a veteran, someone like, Melvin Ingram, or is it the other Ingram? The Ingram edge rusher. There's one that's a running back and one's edge rusher. I always get them mixed up. But, signing a guy who's kind of, towards the end of his career in his 30s, on maybe a budget deal after the draft, historically you can get some good production out of guys like that. So I think they'll pick up somebody, whether it's the draft, free agency, or both, in my opinion.